Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our property tax town hall here. My name is Jared Cornell. I'm honored to be able to serve as the moderator tonight and really help lead a very important discussion that I think is on the top of so many people's minds, whether that be in local government, out in the community, because this is something that's going to be on your ballot on November 3rd. So I think there's a lot of information that's swirling out there. You see it on social media, you see it on TV, you hear about it from your friends. What does it all mean? I'm hoping to be able to break that down today. I'd like to be able to thank Delta Hotels by Marriott for having us here today. This is such an important conversation, and to be in the community at a place that's so receptive, thank you all so much for having us. So, we're going to do a few different rounds of questions for different groups of people. We're going to start off with our state legislators that are already seated here. And I'll go ahead and read a quick introductory bio, just so that you get to know them a little bit better. So I'll start off with Representative Leonard Spencer here. Rep. Spencer is a business leader and a state representative for Florida's House District 45. He is dedicated to lowering the cost of living, expanding economic opportunities, and ensuring access to quality education. With a background in finance and executive leadership, Representative Spencer has a proven track record of fostering partnerships that help small businesses grow and strengthen communities. A father and advocate, Rep. Spencer is committed to building a strong economy that works for all Floridians. Give a round of applause for Representative Leonard Spencer. And of course, beside him, we have our illustrious state senator, Kristen Arrington. She represents Florida's District 25 in the state Senate, which includes Osceola County and parts of Orange County. A lifelong Central Floridian and a small business owner, she brings a strong background in transportation, real estate, consulting, and public service. Before her election to the Senate, she served in the Florida House of Representatives for 4 years from 2020 to 2024. Senator Arrington's legislative priorities include expanding access to affordable housing, enhancing transportation infrastructure, and securing better job opportunities for Florida's workforce. Deeply rooted in her community, Senator Arrington is known for accessibility, compassion, and commitment to delivering real results for the people she serves. Give a round of applause for Senator Kristen Arrington. All right, how are we feeling tonight?
Feeling great.
Awesome.
Thank you. Excited.
Yes. All right, so we've got a few questions here. We'll take about 10 minutes per question, and then we'll kind of work our way through. If you feel like everything's been addressed, we don't have to take up the full time, and then we can move on. All right, so first question, Senator, we'll start with you. Can you take us through the special session on property taxes and how Amendment 3, which is what we're discussing today, how that came to be in the first place?
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for hosting us and being the moderator for us tonight, Jared. So, special session for property tax amendment came as a surprise on the timing. I'll go back just a little bit and say that it was something that the governor discussed for probably about a year and a half. I'm sure when Rep. Spencer answers, he can talk a little bit more because the House process was a little bit different. They actually did have property tax bills that they heard and vetted. We did not in the Senate until the end of session. We came back for a budget vote on a Friday, and I think we found out Thursday morning, oh, while you're up there, guess what? Monday, you're gonna vote on a property tax amendment that just now dropped the language. So we had probably about 4 days to prepare for the vote and to do our background on the vote, which definitely was not enough time. We reached out to our local municipalities, reached out to Osceola County, Kissimmee, St. Cloud, the school district. We worked with the Florida Association of Counties, the Florida League of Cities. They tried to look at what this amendment would do, but there wasn't definitely enough time for us to fully vet this process. Additionally, when the bill came out and it was heard in the first committee, there was some issues because it was drafted so quickly, and some things like animal services, our libraries, some of our services were not going to be included in there, so the bill did need to be amended along the way. But I do want to explain exactly what the amendment would do should it be passed. And so the amendment starting January 2027 would give a homestead exemption of $150,000, and then starting January of 2028, it would increase to $250,000. And then it doesn't tell us exactly how to do this, but it says that the legislature would then be required to develop a full property tax removal plan by 2031. And so this plan did not look like any of them that had been discussed or that had been vetted in the House. So as I said, it was a very rushed process. I heard that the $250,000 exemption was picked because of the 250 Florida celebration, that it was just a great branding thing. So, and then since that, the governor now says that he does not support the amendment that he gave to us. So the timeline on it, just to answer your question, it went just a few days where we all got to view it. No financial analysis was done until after it had passed that session. And then since then, we have had the courts come in and say that the ballot language was not constitutional, so we do have new ballot language. So that is something that, you know, everybody makes sure that they look at, of course, before they vote on it and do their research. But that is exactly how it went in that great special session. But I'm sure Rep. Spencer can gladly talk a little bit more, that there was an actual process that went through as it should be, but we didn't go with any of that.
Well, I guess it's coming over to me. So Jared, again, thank you for being our moderator tonight, and thank all of you for showing up, and our folks online for joining us for this important conversation. And as the senator, pointed out, we came to this, I guess, discussion after a lot of, I think, significant disagreement between the leadership in both the chambers. And in the House, we established a special select committee that actually was formed to look at property tax. And out of that committee, there were roughly, I believe, seven bills that were heard. There was a lot of discussion. We had some questions. They were debated through the committee process, and we ultimately have one of them that made it to the House floor. And within that process, I don't think the Senate, as the senator talked about, had any debate on any bills in the House floor. And then after we went through that process, the special session was called, and as the senator pointed out, we had very little time to review the bill as it came to the floor. We didn't have any financial impact analysis. There was a rushed discussion. We only had one committee hearing, and that really limited any time for the public to come in and question it. Very little time for residents, business owners to come in and actually better understand what we were actually voting on. And so we really didn't have a whole lot of public comment. Now, here we are. After the special session, it's been voted on. It's now in front of the voters. And what we're trying to do in this process, and I think we're learning something new every day about how this is going to impact our communities. And we're having this discussion tonight to hear from some of our local officials on how this bill will significantly impact the state. And I think the most significant portion of the bill that I'm not hearing a lot about is that last sentence that says we're looking to eliminate property taxes by 2031 with no plan. And that is going to fundamentally change the way that we operate in the state. And I don't think that last line is getting enough discussion.
And if you don't mind, Jared, I just want to say, and I'm sure I speak for Rep. Spencer and a lot of my colleagues, that we did discuss that there's potential for property tax reform.
Yeah.
It's hard for first-time home buyers to purchase. A lot of times for our seniors on our fixed income and to downsize, but it's unfortunate that none of those proposals were brought forward. We had some Democrats that did file some in the Senate, but those did not get any hearings, as we mentioned. So I do want to say, obviously, we'll probably talk about it. We both voted against this measure, but we both have talked about and supportive of property tax reform.
Yes.
It's just we just both did not support this measure.
Absolutely, and it's fully understandable. The things that you've outlined here. There was no financial analysis, as you mentioned, Rep. Spencer. You had 4 days to prepare for this vote. There was limited information. The ballot language that was submitted to a judge was ruled to be unconstitutional initially, and the governor has withdrawn his support from this proposal. So there's a lot of concern with the logistics of it and the process altogether. So thank you for outlining those points. And you touched on a very important part, Rep. Spencer, where you talk about how are we going to supplement these funds? Because we run on property taxes for many of our local essential services. In the great state of Florida, of course, we do not have an income tax. So property taxes in many ways make up for the lack of other funding sources. So this amendment has been described by many as potentially a tax shift. But what does that really mean? What does that mean for renters? What does that mean for small business owners? And how would people be able to anticipate changes to their local government and the way that they're funding themselves in the future?
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand, what this actually is all about, right? And we talked about the current property tax proposal in its current form is only going to provide relief for homesteaded properties, right? And so that means rental properties, second homes, commercial properties, they're not going to receive the same benefit because they're not homesteaded, right? And so when we think about how local municipalities operate, that lost revenue has to come from somewhere. And it's probably going to be shifted to these non-homesteaded entities, whether that be rental properties, second homes, or commercial real estate. And what does this mean for renters, right? And so if you're a commercial real estate owner, and now your property taxes are going to be increased to potentially offset some of the homestead property taxes that are going to be eliminated, you have to recover that because you got mortgage, you got maintenance that you have to pay. And that's going to be passed on. And it's going to be passed on to renters. It's going to be passed on to small businesses. And that is going to mean higher rents for renters. It's going to mean higher rent for those who have small businesses and commercial buildings, which means now those small business owners are going to be impacted, their bottom line. They may not be able to hire people. They're not going to be able to pay wages because they now have to, offset these homestead property decreases. And so when we think about this tax burden, I think it's important to, talk about the holistic impact that it's going to have, not just to, maybe a positive benefit to some of the homeowners, but within the entire community, it's going to be increased rents for renters and small businesses.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Arrington, can you please describe this tax shift and what this means for renters and small businesses?
Yeah, well, to make it easy, when the bill comes, someone has to pay it. So who is going to pay for it and pay for those services? As Rep. Spencer said, renters and non-homesteaded properties can pick up some of that, slack or where those points are. But also what that could do to us as well is really mess with our real estate market. If we think about all those folks that come here and invest and have properties and that like to have their rental homes or like to come here for their vacation homes, they might not be coming here anymore. And additionally, how it's going to work for affordable housing, are folks going to build homes that are $300,000 value? Is local government going to approve something like that if they're not going to be able to get any revenue for it? So there's a lot of factors that I'm sure we'll also hear from our locals on how and what those difficult decisions that would be. But I would say somehow someone's going to have to pay for it. Does that mean that, like when you travel abroad, are you going to have to start paying to use the restroom at the park? Or you have to start paying to go into the library? All those little things that we love, like going to Little League, going to community centers. Are we going to have to, are they going to have to raise fees to cover that? So at the end of the day, that bill is still going to have to be paid by someone. So it's just who is the one that it shifts to.
So,
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to that, because we talk about the tax burden and all the things that we need to run our communities. When we think about, police, fire, emergency, medical services, trash, sewer collection, road improvements, all of these infrastructure projects have to get paid for. And when we talk about this lost revenue related to, this property tax elimination, those costs don't go away. And when we think about where we are, in this current environment, and, when we talk about police and fire, there's supposed to be safeguards around it, but the police and fire unions are not in support of this. And so when we talk about this tax shift, we have to, again, really think about, what balance are we going to be, looking at when we are trying to balance our budgets at the local level. Similar to how we sit around the kitchen table, right? If somebody loses their job or if you take a pay cut, you have to sit around the kitchen table and make a decision around what you're actually going to pay for and what you're going to cut away. And I'm really concerned that a lot of the services that we've come to know and love in our communities, we're going to have to make some really, really tough decisions.
And sorry, Jared, I'd like to add also, areas that are rural and areas with smaller populations, they are going to be crippled if this passes. And then so Tallahassee will be picking winners and losers and what counties and what municipalities are they going to support. And then, the governor becomes basically a mayor of all the municipalities in Florida and picking, who's gonna, succeed and who's not. So it also takes the power out of our local municipalities and the people that are right there taking the services, and will put that power in Tallahassee's hands.
Absolutely, and that's a question that we'll certainly pose to our local officials as well. And I want to touch on two of the points you made. Rep. Spencer, you mentioned that a lot of the police and firefighters in the state of Florida are not supportive of this. What would be realistic?
The governor doesn't support it.
And the governor as well. What could this mean for service times for our actual everyday people when they're relying on these life-saving services every single day?
Well, I mean, it gets back to, and again, we're going to hear from our local leaders on this. But as you start to tighten your belt, what does that mean? Maybe fewer shifts for our emergency workers in order to meet, the budget constraints, which could mean reduced response times, right? And so I don't know if it's going to be the same throughout every community, because every community is going to have to make different decisions. But those are the things, and those are the type of decisions that our local leaders are going to have to make, because they have to balance their budgets.
And Senator Arrington, you mentioned the picking and choosing of potentially the governor being the mayor of Florida, if you will. With 67 counties, municipalities, would it really turn into potentially counties having to come to Tallahassee and ask for budgets to make sure that they are able to provide the services they need for their residents?
Absolutely, and when the proposal first came out, there was actually going to be language in the ballot initiative saying that there would be a created fund. But we amended that in the Senate because the policy, the legislation wasn't there to back it up. It was just going to be almost a teaser, I hate to say, that we were going to tell voters, like, don't worry, we'll make up for it in Tallahassee, but there was no plan in place for that. So I'm sure that still is something that is out there and, hanging over. But I would say the sad thing is, a lot of these rural counties, which we are not one of, they don't come and ask for help. These are folks that, just are just not used to going to Tallahassee, or not, wanting outsiders, and very proud people. So a lot of those smaller counties and municipalities are really gonna be hurting and won't have someone that's, fighting for them up in Tallahassee. So it will definitely get to be, who's got the best lobbyist, who's got the voters that you want there, and it just starts to get, unfortunately, into more of a political game, which we know that the locals that are closest to our constituents are the best ones to make the decisions on what they need.
And it potentially puts at risk the everyday working class families that elect local leaders to protect them. And in other words, you have to put a lot of faith in the lobbyists and other organizations that do that. So thank you for diving in a little bit more on that. Our third question, tourism. We're here at a resort in the tourism hub of the country, near Walt Disney World. Tourism obviously is a major part of our local economy here in Osceola County. How could Amendment 3 impact the hotel and tourism industry? Senator Arrington, if you could kick us off.
Yeah, so as I also talked a little bit earlier about our real estate market, and those folks that have short-term rentals, not just have vacation homes or have Airbnbs, those folks, if their property taxes go up, then they are going to have to pass those fees on to the visitors that come here to our area. So that could affect the amount of people that come here that are maybe not able to afford to. We find a lot of families love to come here and stay in short-term rentals and Airbnbs and stay with pools with their families, but if that's harder for them to afford to do so. And then we might look at things like they might have to look at raising the TDT tax to get more revenue, which that would be our visitors, but Or we might look at Tallahassee as like, well, great, y'all got money down there in TDT, we're gonna take that because we see money someplace. So there's a lot of things that, you know, could affect our economy different ways, and just in services. If we have more potholes in the roads because our local government can't fix our roads, if we're not able to, you know, fund Sunrail and help for our transit, that affects all of our workforce for those jobs for the tourism economy, and then also those folks that are visiting too. So there's an extreme ripple effect, you know, that could happen, and it will just be depending on what those decisions would be that our locals decide. You know, that where we have to have reductions in services. We know transportation and transit is very important to our workers here and our visitors, and you know, something like that would be one of the first things that unfortunately could suffer.
Rep. Spencer, how could Amendment 3 impact the hotel and tourism industry?
Yeah, you know, I think again, it's going to depend on how the local municipalities, you know, really try to adjust to this loss of tax revenue. You know, and if it does shift to things like higher taxes on visitors, right? We have to increase sales tax. If we do that, then, you know, that's going to mean higher operating costs for our hotels, for our, you know, amusement parks, for our restaurants. And ultimately, it's going to make Central Florida and Florida as a whole probably a more expensive destination for tourists, right? We also have to think about what this means for local infrastructure. When we talked a little bit about, you know, emergency services, but it also includes roads, you know, our transportation assets. You know, property taxes help to fund some of those infrastructure projects. And if we have less infrastructure projects going on and our infrastructure starts to deteriorate, that also makes Central Florida a less attractive place for visitors. And I think most importantly, what I don't want folks to miss in this discussion is the impact that it would have on some of our hospitality workers. You know, we talked about what will happen in terms of rent for those who are renting. As these commercial, you know, apartment complexes, or even individuals who own homes who are not homesteaded, you know, those property taxes would increase, and they're going to pass them on to our hospitality workers. Listen, we're already in an affordability crisis. When I'm talking to folks, that is the #1 issue that folks are sharing with me, and this directly will impact the cost that people are paying for essential things just to keep a roof over their heads. And so ultimately, you know, this amendment is intended, I think, in the best case scenario, to address some of the affordability issues. But what will happen is it could wind up hurting the most vulnerable people in their pockets.
And Rep. Spencer, Senator Arrington had mentioned potentially passing taxes onto tourists through the form of potentially increasing the tourism development tax or something similar. Is there any discussion about, if this were to pass, maybe increasing sales tax for everyday purchases for Floridians across the state and tourists alike?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, and again, I go back to, you know, the senator's comments when we kind of opened up. You have to pay for these things. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the money has to come from somewhere. And, you know, whether it is through property tax, whether it's through sales tax, whether it's through higher fees that municipalities and local governments have to charge in order to pay for some of these, it's just essential services. That doesn't even count for, you know, some of the things that we need from an infrastructure perspective. And so to answer your question, that could be on the table, you know, sales tax, increased fees. And I think what we will probably hear from our, you know, municipal leaders is that all things are on the table to close the budget gaps that we see, because by law, we have to have a balanced budget.
Senator Arrington, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say we've heard our colleagues on the other side of the aisle say that kind of early on, or say, well, you know, if we have to, we would raise sales tax. So I would say, just as Rep. Spencer said, you know, everything would be on the table, and there would be difficult discussions. In Tallahassee, we have seen over the last couple of years that we are going to have budget shortfalls. So usually when you don't have budget shortfalls, you go quit your job. But you know, if we see that on the horizon, and then we're also going to have less revenue, there's going to have to be some way to make that up. So I think, unfortunately, it would be one of those things where all things are on the table. We've heard that discussion. You know, there's an argument. Some folks will say, you know, well, that's the goods thing. You know, I think that one would hurt us, especially in Central Florida, and our working families, and you know, would hurt our tourism industry a bunch.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else from the state's perspective in your time in the legislature that you would like to say about this that we didn't cover in these questions? Rep. Spencer, is there anything else?
Yeah, you know, as we close, I would say that I really understand why Floridians want property tax relief. Because at the end of the day, I think every Floridian wants some relief in this affordability crisis. You know, when I think about families across our state, you know, they are struggling. And as I mentioned earlier, that's the number one issue that I hear folks, you know, coming to me about. And I think everyone, homeowners, workers, everybody deserves meaningful relief. I think one relief aspect that we should really be focused on is property insurance. When we look at the rate at which property insurance has increased across our state, that is something that I think the legislature could act on and should act on in order to really address that number one issue to me. And I think if we were to address the property insurance issue, that's something that could make home ownership more affordable, more accessible to first-time home buyers, without pitting homeowners against renters and residents against small businesses. I also think that, you know, as we're looking at this broader affordability crisis, we have to be, you know, more strategic. We've got to look beyond what the ballot language is saying and really consider what this proposal is going to mean 5, 10, 15 years from now. What is our state going to look like if this passes? And we have to look at it from the aspect of not just from home ownership, but what is it going to look like for renters? What is it going to look like for our seniors, for working families, for businesses, and the communities that we all call home? Are we going to look back at this moment in time and look at a short-term solution that will really, ultimately, fundamentally change the state that we call home?
Thank you. Senator Arrington, any other closing remarks about property tax reform?
Well, that's pretty hard to follow, Rep. Spencer. I agree with pretty much everything that Rep. Spencer just said, and you know, want to say that the property insurance crisis, you know, is something that we heard so much about, and I feel like, unfortunately, this property tax conversation became a distraction from it. This last session, we didn't do anything in regards to property insurance. I know that several bills were filed on the Senate side from our Democratic caucus. So I do urge folks too that, yes, we hear you, and you know, keep speaking about property insurance too. Even though if your bill has gone down a few dollars and you're saying, I'm seeing a decrease, well, sure, it went down $40, but what is that increase? Was it 80% to get you there over the last few years, and that we still just have not, you know, done enough for that, and to, you know, really look at this proposal. We have, and hopefully my team will share with this online, we have a property tax info sheet that talks about literally what the language does, talks about kind of your layout of everything, and breaks it down for Osceola County and City of Kissimmee and City of St. Cloud. So really look for your municipality and see like what those services are. You know, talk to your local electeds, ask them, we'll get to ask them in a minute too, you know, and talk to them about what's important to you to make sure that those things are protected should it pass, but also to find out what is first, unfortunately, on the chopping block, and see if that is something that's important to you. Talk to your teachers, talk to your firefighters, talk to your police. As Rep. Spencer said, and we've said, the governor does not support this proposal. The Florida Sheriff's Association does not support it. The Florida Police Benevolent Association does not support it. The Florida Firefighters Association does not support it. So even though you'll hear sometimes that they are going to be protected, It's that they're gonna be protected at that current level. So your services that you have might just stay status quo. They won't be able to build new firefighting stations. They won't be able to provide those more services. So just really think about how that affects you, your family, and your neighbors. We all like to look out for each other, and we will continue still to fight for other issues for that affordability crisis, like property insurance, like the Hometown Heroes program, where we have more funding for people to have first-time home buyer programs. We really want to make sure that people are buying homes and that they are able to get the American dream, and that our seniors are able to stay in their homes. So we will continue to look at ways that we can make sure that we deliver that for them.
Thank you so much. Obviously, there's an affordability crisis here in the state of Florida and in many parts of the U.S. And Rep. Spencer, you mentioned it, short-term fix. Is this actually lasting infrastructure that's going to make Floridians' lives easier? And there are other options potentially, like property insurance reform and other approaches that might be on the table, but this is the approach that's being taken with just 4 days of prep work and the controversy along the way. So thank you both so much for taking the time to answer these questions. Are there any questions from our members of the public here that are in attendance today? All right, I think we're ready to hear from our local elected officials. Round of applause for Representative Leonard Spencer and Senator Kristen Arrington. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and call up our 3 local elected officials for Osceola County. I will read your bios, and then please just come sit up here together, and then we'll work our way through our questions. So first off, we have your Osceola County Chairman, Brandon Arrington. Welcome, Chairman Arrington. He was elected to the Osceola County Commission in 2008 to represent District 3. Chairman Arrington also serves on the Orlando Economic Partnership Board of Directors, the Metro Plan Orlando Board, and the Central Florida Expressway Authority, their governing board. Previous roles of his includes being the chairman of the board in 2011, 15, 17, 21, and 22, and he currently serves as the chairman. I don't know how you've done it for all these years. He also served on other leadership roles regionally, including chairman of Metro Plan Orlando, vice chairman of Links, chairman of Sunrail Board, Central Florida Commission on Homelessness, and chairman of Workforce of Central Florida, among others. Chairman Arrington also serves as the executive director of Osceola Arts, our community's local art agency, where he is proud to champion the arts and works to provide cultural outlets to our diverse community. Commissioner Arrington is a Kissimmee native and a graduate of Osceola High School, where he met his wife, Senator Arrington. The commissioner is also a graduate of Auburn University, and this pains me to say as a Gator, but I'm told to read it. Go War Eagles. No Gators, I mixed it up. There we go, we got a mix here. Outside of serving his community, Chairman Arrington is an animal lover. He currently has a dog named Brody, and he enjoys spending his time outdoors. He appreciates all the amenities that our community has to offer, including our lakes, pristine parks, and our beautiful manicured golf courses. Welcome, Chairman Arrington. Thank you so much. All right, next we have our property appraiser, Katrina Scarborough. Welcome, property appraiser Scarborough. Property appraiser Katrina Scarborough, a lifelong Osceola County resident, has dedicated 41 years to public service, becoming the first female property appraiser in 2008. She leads a team of 64, participates in community events, and holds professional designations, CFA, CCF, MCF, and she enjoys spending time with her sons, grandchildren, fiance, and daughter. Welcome, property appraiser Katrina Scarborough. And then last but certainly not least, we have our Osceola County School Board Chair, Heather Kahoun. She is a lifelong Osceola County resident, local business owner, former educator, and community leader. After nearly a decade in education, she transitioned into marketing and later served as the Osceola County School District's social media specialist. In 2021, she launched her own marketing and campaign consulting business, and School Board Chair Kahoun was elected to the Osceola County School Board in 2022 and re-elected unopposed in 2026. Congratulations. She has served 3 times as School Board Chair and was elected President-elect of the Florida School Boards Association in 2026, where she continues to advocate for quality public education across Florida. Welcome, School Board Chair Kahoun. All right, so we got some interesting perspectives from the state level. And of course, the three of you get to see things on a very intimate level here in Osceola County. So thank you for being part of this discussion. We'll work through some questions, and these are kind of pointed more for you individually, but if you feel like there's something that you want to jump in on, please feel free to do so. I know we only have 2 mics, so, we have a good great. So we'll pass it along, and if there's anything that we missed, please let me know. So our first question for Chairman Arrington. What would Amendment 3 property tax cuts mean for Osceola County? Which county services or sectors, public safety, infrastructure, arts programs, would be most effective?
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. Do you guys have those slides? Okay, perfect. Right here, first off, this is the exemptions, kind of what it shows for, how it works here in Osceola County, and what those exemptions look like and from an economic impact to our community moving forward for 2027 and 2028. If you go to the next slide, these are all the programs that are serviced through the general fund, which will be impacted through Amendment 3. So as you can see, all of these items up here will be items that will be considered on the chopping block. The first one I will tell you is probably Osceola Prosper, our senior programs, our veteran services programs. There will be a discussion of whether or not we eliminate animal services in Osceola County and what that looks like. Anything that we do that's a community benefit will go away. It will even impact, go to the next slide real quick. Perfect. This is a great way to look at your tax dollars at work. We do this illustration through most of our budget processes every year. It shows you where a dollar of your taxes goes. And as you can see, a lot of where your money goes is pretty much set within public safety, whether it's your sheriff, then your jail, also our fire and EMS, and you can see it gets smaller and smaller for what programs are able to be funded through there, and how it will be limited as well. So it'll be a huge impact to Osceola County. As I said before, any of the programs that have helped move this county and move the needle will be impacted. Our veteran services programs, we employ 3 folks in our veteran services to make sure veterans have access to the issues and services that are available for them. You wouldn't understand how hard it is difficult to navigate that system unless you've actually had to navigate it. Those positions will likely go away. As Senator Arrington said earlier, I'm sorry to be the Debbie Downer on this one, but it's going to be terrible. As I tell everyone, the first couple things you can imagine is our right-of-way mowing. We will not mow the grass in our communities anymore. Dead animals on the side of the roadway, we will not pick them up anymore. Currently in Osceola County, we have a 24-hour response time to fix your potholes. That will not be the reality. We've just built 7 new fire stations over the last couple of years. Those will be the last fire stations we ever build. I know that may sound dramatic, but we've already just adopted a zero-based budgeting moving forward. All of our constitutional officers, except for one, are moving forward with about a 6% increase, which is what we've been able to raise. Our sheriff has a request for a 30% budget increase this year. So the idea of our public safety being protected once this measure is passed is not realistic. So it will be an unbelievable burden to our community long term. And I'll stop talking real soon. But the thing people have to remember is this is in our Constitution. So the only way this will be amended is once again it is put back on the ballot to be removed, and we will have to have 60% of the voters decide to remove that once it's passed. I say that because that is a near impossible task to have happen. So just be careful what we wish for. Sorry.
And Chairman Arrington, I think a narrative that a lot of people hear is that there's a lot of waste in local government budgets. I'm looking at this, I'm hearing what you're saying. There doesn't sound like there's any waste in this. How tight is the belt right now? Is there any wiggle room whatsoever, or is this as dire as we talk about?
It's as dire as we talk about. The services that your local government provides will be minimal. And that's the reality of it. Florida is a cheap state. We have always been a cheap state. We don't have a lot of taxes. We don't have income taxes. And as you heard before from our fine esteemed colleagues in Tallahassee, somebody's got to foot the bill at the end of the day. And so there's got to be a way to pay for things. In Central Florida, even on our public safety side, we play a game the last 10 years of continually raising the wages of our firefighters and our police officers in order to keep up with the other agencies
within Central Florida that continue to poach firefighter after sheriff office every time someone raises a salary. So it's lifted the burden so exceedingly high on local governments. It's a challenge to just keep up, let alone lose a good $100 million out of your budget to be able to fix that stuff. And so, I mean, we'll be eliminating economic development. The idea of what we've been able to do at Neo City will become a much different concept, and how we're able to advertise, promote, and move the needle from economic development to be able to build a sustainable tax base. We talked earlier, your trash fee, I can guarantee you if this passes, your trash fee will go up. I can guarantee you your fire fee will go up. Those are two items that are already subsidized through your general fund, and that's the easiest thing to do, is make you pay full price for those two things. I would tell you, I'm not a commissioner that's looking to raise property taxes, because we don't have enough commercial and industrial properties in our area, and if we further burden them, we can't bring them in, and that's what we need. We need to be able to shorten our commute for our community, not have 75% of our community go to Orange or some other community to work. So without that opportunity to build, I mean, we'll have to be looking at, we're going to be taking on the bill for Sunrail here soon from the state of Florida. I don't know how anyone will be able to pay that bill.
Before we move on to our next question, is there anything that you wanted to add on to this topic? You don't have to, I have individual questions for you as well. Okay. Chairman Arrington, last question for you specifically. We had talked about the preemption of local government and how local governments would have to go up to Tallahassee and perhaps ask to get funded for these local services. How could this impact what we often hear as home rule and the ability of cities and counties to respond to local needs?
You know, I think you can obviously see every legislative process every year, there are already winners and losers. And that's defined by the political party that represents your community. Republican communities do a lot better than Democrat communities throughout the state of Florida in appropriations. That is a reality that exists today. So I try and tell people to think about a hurricane. We haven't had one in the state of Florida in a number of years. Local governments have to take on the burden of the cleanup. And when I say that, we could be spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get our communities back up on its feet to move forward. And then we have to wait for the federal government to reimburse us. That can take years. There will not be sufficient funds in local government's coffers to be able to respond to hurricanes. And we will call you and let you know, I'm sorry, do not put your debris in the right of way. It is your responsibility. And so there, we will literally be relying on the state to resolve that issue, because there won't be funds. It's not conceivable to think local governments will be able to take on that task and that responsibility with a limitation of revenue that's coming in.
And there's an irony, right? One of the founding principles of our country is federalism, to give different levels of government, but it sounds like this is a way to consolidate power at the state level and take it away from people locally. So thank you for outlining how this can impact home rule and our ability to respond to local needs. Property Appraiser Scarborough, hello.
Hello.
How would Amendment 3 interact with existing Save Our Homes assessment limitations, and what would that mean for homesteaded property owners?
Okay, so in the short answer, it's not going to affect the Save Our Homes, but I want to explain what Save Our Homes is. And that is the difference between your market value and your assessed value. So on the slide, you will see the very first bubble is your market value. And I know you're not going to be able to see the numbers, but you can go to my website and look up your particular property, and you can find under property values your market value, which is the value that we place on your property based on comparable sales in your area. And then the next bubble outlined in red is the Save Our Homes benefit, which is the amount of the difference between the next bubble, which is the assessed value. So you've got your market value that is set by what properties are selling for, and then you have your assessed value, which is capped for homesteaded properties at the CPI or 3%, whichever is lower. This year it's CPI is 2.7. So that difference between those two is the Save Our Homes cap. So this would not affect that, but I do want to point out that with the cap on homestead and non-homesteaded property, the cap will continue. This does not change that. So it may take away the property taxes for everything, or excuse me, it may increase the exemption, but your assessed value is still gonna go up every year. Even if your market value comes down, because until those two values meet, the assessed value is going to go up. And so I think that people do need to understand that that value will continue to go up every year. Non-homesteaded, in this Amendment 3, the proposal is to take it from a 10% cap to a 5% cap. Again, those properties will go up 5% every year. So it is not going to affect it at all, but I just want people to understand what Save Our Homes is. Please go to the website and look up your property, and it will show you, again, explaining that the first bubble is the market value. The second is actually the Save Our Homes cap that you, or the benefit that you receive, which means you're not paying taxes on that. And then the third bubble is your assessment.
And of course, as the property appraiser, you look at all sorts of different properties that you're taxing. Of course, there's homesteaded properties, non-homesteaded properties, commercial, businesses, all these sorts of things. Do you think this is a sustainable way that we can make sure that we are generating revenue in the future by cutting these homestead exemptions for future budgets?
Well, it's definitely going to be a tax shift, for sure. Because if you take away from the homestead, you're going to shift it to the non-homestead, especially over the course of several years. Another thing that is a part of the amendment that could be an issue is that if you are not a Florida citizen as of January 1st, 2027, you are not going to qualify for the new $150,000 exemption. You will qualify for the $50,000 for the first 5 years. So that's another caveat that's in this, is that people may move here, but they're not going to receive that benefit for 5 years. So voters need to understand that as well, but I believe it is going to be a tax shift.
Does that apply to first-time home buyers as well, that $50,000, or as long as you're a resident, you get grandfathered into it?
As long as you're a resident by January 1st of 2027, you will qualify if the new one, if the proposal does pass.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, thank you. School Board Chair, Kristen, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good, thank you for joining us. So Osceola County Schools are experiencing significant growth with a growing community, with existing schools improving and new schools like Nova Lakes High School being built to serve our growing communities. How could Amendment 3 impact the school district's ability to keep up with this growth and continue to invest in our students?
Yeah, thank you for having us tonight, Senator Arrington and Rep. Spencer. It's going to impact us, even though we were carved out of it. By the time it got to the final vote, it doesn't carve us out completely. So some of the things that we've already started talking about is will be impacted. One of the things Commissioner Arrington mentioned was the Osceola Prosper. So we have such a great relationship with our county commissioners, and they've invested in our students. If you don't know what Osceola Prosper is, it's taking any graduating senior from the Osceola County School District and providing them free college at Valencia College or at OTEC, our community college that we offer programs at. And we were one of the lowest. I think we were like 65 or 66 out of 67 for students going to college after high school, and now we are third in the state for students going to college through this program. So obviously there was a huge barrier for our students when it came to being able to afford college. So that'll be a program, as you mentioned, will go away, and so we will then obviously drop back down. So our students will not get that opportunity to continue their education. So we are very worried about that. We love to see that our students are making these post-secondary plans in Osceola now. The other thing, when it comes to safety and security, that will be a huge impact on the school district. So right now, we share the burden of our SROs, which we love having in our schools so that our students are safe, our teachers are safe. We share that with each of the municipalities. So Osceola County provides us almost $5 million towards the salaries, and we provide $3 million. City of Kissimmee provides almost $800,000, and we provide $900,000. City of St. Cloud provides $620,000, we provide $875,000. So when this happens, we will then have to take that on because the municipalities are not going to be able to share that with us. So the cost of SROs is going to go up significantly for us at the school district. We want SROs in our schools. We don't want to have, you know, I would call them mall cops or, you know, something like that. We don't want just a security guard in a school. We want a sheriff or a police officer, and our community has said that that's what they want in our schools as well. So that will be something that will affect us greatly, and we're very, you know, worried about the safety and security of our students, because that's, you know, it used to be educating our students was number one, and really keeping our students safe is number one now, and education just comes after that for us.
Absolutely. And, you know, many of the people that are going to be voting on Amendment 3 are working class families that are looking for that affordability save. What is realistically potentially a trade-off that working class families with kids that are coming up through the public school system, what are they looking at the trade-off there between maybe saving some money on a monthly basis versus the services that would be given to their children in Osceola County Public Schools?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're seeing is, and if you don't know this, schools are funded primarily from property taxes. So that is why we were thankful that it was carved out, so that our funding was saved. But one of the things you guys talked about earlier too was the municipalities having to go to Tallahassee and ask for that money. We still do have to do that as school districts across the state. So every year our Florida School Boards Association and all of the board members across the state are traveling to Tallahassee during legislative session and asking for an increase, because everything is increasing every single year, and so that's how we get to you know, provide our teachers and our staff with an increase in their salary. So if it's not coming from the state, we're not able to provide it at this time. So that's something, you know, they're going to have to learn from us on how we've done that if it comes down to that for them. But at the federal level, we see huge impacts that are going to happen in fiscal year 27 with title funds that are coming down from the federal. There's so many title funds that are actually being zeroed out by the president right now when it comes to what the federal government is providing us. So a lot of that is professional development for our teachers. Teachers will not get to have the same level of professional development that they have right now to continue to be better teachers for our students. Any of our students in the ELL and ESOL program will have services significantly reduced, and our population here in Osceola County is a huge population of ELL students, but services that they get in order to you know, teach them English so that they can go on to further their education, those will be drastically reduced. So when we're losing that money, and then we're losing things from having to pay for our SROs, or seeing our students not get to, you know, go on to college and better themselves, the families will feel that impact.
Thank you, and of course nobody wants that, so thank you for talking about it. And I'm sure, you know, you're associated with some of the statewide organizations that look at public education. Is this something that people are concerned about across the state of Florida that are in these school board chair positions and beyond?
Yeah, I would say every school board member, especially those that are members of the Florida School Boards Association, it's a huge topic that, you know, we talk about. We, you know, flooded the inboxes of our legislators when it was being looked at, and that is how, you know, the removal of us, the carve out of us came. But like we said, I mean, we're seeing increases in everything, and trying to keep up with that, it's hard.
Thank you. And then something that can be controlled a little bit more locally that is also going to be on the ballot separately from Amendment 3 is the millage referendum that was locally passed by the county. And this is going to be on the ballot on November 3rd as well. Can you outline what this millage referendum is, what that means, and why voters should consider voting yes or no on this referendum?
Yeah. So like I said before, our funds come predominantly from property taxes, and so there's only really a few small ways that we're able to generate funds ourselves to you know, increase things for us. So right now we do have some sales tax that we get. We get a quarter penny from shared with the county and the municipalities, and then we have a half-cent sales tax that was passed by our voters as well. All of that is for our capital projects. So that is how we have been able to provide new schools, new transportation facilities, do comprehensive renovations on our oldest schools, which those have been great for our families. They love coming in. Gateway High School is one that was just renovated recently, and I had people telling me they couldn't couldn't, imagine what that school could be for their students from what it was. The other way that we can generate funds is by asking for an additional millage from our voters. So that is something we have decided to do this year. We had decided to do this long before this property tax referendum was being added to the ballot. So it is a little murky when it comes to that. And we are not the only one. There's 27 other districts in the state of Florida right now either going out for an additional millage that they've never had before or renewing a millage. It has to be renewed every year. What this will do for us though, it will allow us to retain and recruit teachers because we can use this on the operations side of things. So we can try to give our teachers a better salary, better living wage, which we do think will help them with affordability of homes as well. So, that is something, a lot of them are renters. They can't afford to own a home right now. And so we're hoping that this is something that will allow them that opportunity. We will also be able to use this money then towards our safety and security because of the fact that that might go away when it comes to the municipality sharing that cost with us. So that is actually, we're carving that out. Number one, if this passes, that safety and security will get the dollars first from that to keep that whole. And then we will drop the rest down to our teachers for the recruitment and the retention. And then finally, our arts programs, our athletic programs, our music programs, those will go away if this property tax referendum goes through because we will be taking those funds and putting them towards the safety and security, putting them towards our teachers and things like that. So this initiative is something that we're hoping the voters will see the value of. So 1 mil is for like $100,000, it's $1,000. So over the course of a year, it's a very minimal amount that you will see an increase. Huge impacts on our side of things though. So right now, for one student, it will give us an additional almost $1,000 per student, and that's kind of how we, budget things. It's the state funding comes down to a base student allocation. So an additional $1,000 per student that we'll be able to spend out into our teachers, our programs, our safety and security.
And there are parameters around what this bill could be used for, correct?
The
It's
things
not
I
a
just outlined is
slush
all we
fund.
can do. Yes, no. So what the ballot, the official ballot language talks about the 3 things I just said. So recruitment and retention, safety and security, and our extracurricular programs. So those are the only things we can spend it on. And there will be an independent advisory board that is made up of local citizens. We already do that with our sales tax money. So we've had a business advisory board that helps us look at our 5-year capital plan and make sure we're spending that money wisely on the renovations and the new construction. And so the same thing will happen with this. We have an independent advisory board. They will be looking at what we're spending it on and ensuring that we are following what we said through that ballot.
So this is money that is earmarked for specific purposes to improve Osceola County Public Schools and will be independently reviewed by the Citizen Advisory Board. So
Yes.
thank you for emphasizing those points. And one thing that you talked about, teacher salaries. Florida is 50th last in the nation for teacher salaries. So when you look at these sorts of referendums, there are ways that you can try to help your working class families because we can't forget that our teachers are also our working class professionals.
And
in
so to
Osceola
add that,
County.
you say we're 50th out of 50 in the nation. Osceola County in the state of Florida, we are 64 out of 67 for our teacher salaries because of our property tax base. We do have a lower property tax base than many of the other counties. So we already are one of the lowest funded districts in the state of Florida. A lot of people say, okay, we'll cut your overhead. We are actually one of the lowest districts also with administrative overhead. So we are 66 or 67, maybe we are the lowest, I think, with our administrative overhead. So we are very lean already when it comes to that.
Thank you for emphasizing those points, Chair Kirkland. So closing remarks, I'd like to go down the line one last time. Chairman Arrington, closing thoughts on Amendment 3 and anything else that we didn't cover today.
I just think the biggest closing thoughts for Amendment 3 is think of the longevity and what we want Florida to look like in the future. I don't think anyone would agree that we're this utopian state where there is no traffic and we have clean water and there are no issues. That's not a reality that we live in. And also, I always like to think about inflation as well, because there's a big thing when we're talking about putting caps on what can be raised that may not match
inflation as well. And if you talk to my county manager, he's like, he basically believes the way this is structured, it will get worse and worse every single year from what a county is able to provide its community and how that sets up. And so it's just a long-term decision. I know it's been structured as free money, but nothing is free in this world, as we've all learned once or twice, I think.
Thank you, Chairman Arrington. Property Appraiser Scarborough, closing thoughts?
My office is the one that administers all exemptions. We anticipate obviously a lot more applications if this should pass. If budgets have to be cut, that means I've got to do with less, just like the county. So it is going to impact me personally with my office and being able to do the job that we need to do, which is administering these exemptions, staying on top of fraud, and also staying on top of the values in the county and all the new construction that hopefully continues to generate to help raise funds to have taxes. So I just know that we will be impacted by having to, just like everybody else, do more with less. And it could have an adverse effect as well.
Thank you so much. Chair Kahoun, any closing thoughts?
So this past year, state grade came out, summertime, it always comes out, and we were 1/10 of a point away from an A grade in the Osceola County School District. We've never been an A grade since they started grading over 20 years ago. So we're right on the cusp of that, and it's because of the things that we're able to provide our students and our teachers that we've gotten to that point. If this were to pass, and if our millage were not to pass, we might have a really hard time keeping up with the grade that we currently have and ensuring our students are getting the best education possible. So that is just something that I want everybody to keep in mind. We want good schools. People want to move to Osceola County because you'll have a good school. And so that's something that we'll see a drastic impact on if this were to happen.
Thank you so much for your closing thoughts. Are there any questions from the public for our elected officials here? All right, I think we did a great job of covering it all. One more round of applause for your elected officials here. So you heard from 5 elected officials: state senator, state representative, Osceola County chairman, Osceola County property appraiser, and your Osceola County school board chair. And the message seems to be universal, that there are a lot of concerns about what this would have an impact on. There is a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of details that have not been worked out. So there seem to be concerns. It's something that, of course, go home and make your decisions, but think about these things as we look towards November 3rd, and we try to make the best decision for Osceola County and for the entire state of Florida. Thank you all again so much for having me tonight. Of course, on the screens up here, we have information about your state representatives' offices. Senator Arrington and Representative Spencer's teams are open to any constituent services that you might have needs for and beyond. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and that closes out our program tonight. Have a great night.
Yeah. Jared, you're ready for like a game show.
I know, right? Starting doing a wheel of fortune. Yeah, so officially
Okay.
because I was the interim
Well, you've done a fantastic job. No offense to you, but I was definitely worried. There was maybe
it is funny to say, coming into this because I just jumped on it. Very quickly, over the last 3 years, so I'm just grateful for that. We have such a good
This is just like.
That's what it takes for us to continue.
You gotta make